Is there anything the average citizen can do to protect himself from the ravages of the rising inflation?
Unfortunately, there is very, very little he can do. I hate to say this, and yet it's true. The most effective protection against inflation is high living.
How do you mean that? How do you mean that?
I mean that, unfortunately, there are no assets which you can confidently acquire with the expectation that they will provide you a hedge against inflation. On the other hand, if you buy yourself a nice house, you buy yourself a nice suit, you buy yourself a picture to hang on the wall, you are protected against the ravages of inflation.
So, in other words, convert your money into material things?
Unfortunately, it's not a very desirable thing to do. Don't convert all of it. You've got to have some reserve for emergency. I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm saying that inflation is the kind of thing which leaves you with no good choices.
But that sounds like playing the violin while Rome is burning.
Well, tell me the alternative. The question was not what the nation ought to do.
Yeah.
I have no difficulty in saying what our governmental policy ought to be to end inflation. That's a different question. The question is, what can I as an individual do? And unfortunately, given the uncertainty of inflation, given the fact that real estate has proved a good hedge and it's proved a bad hedge, that stocks have proved a good hedge and they've proved a bad hedge, that government bonds are a snare and a delusion, that they have proved a very, very poor investment for the poor suckers who were induced by Uncle Sam to come into them. Unfortunately, there is no good way in which the ordinary citizen, the ordinary person, can really protect his assets against inflation.
Dr. Friedman, I wanted to point out that a lot of people will agree that medical care costs are terribly expensive these days, and some hospitals that I know of, particularly in the South, have cost containment programs that are voluntary. Are these feasible? And if they are, why don't other businesses start them?
Well, in the first place, every business has a cost containment program. There is no business in this country that doesn't unless it's on the verge of bankruptcy. In the second place, in all of these questions, one shouldn't look at the symptoms. One ought to go back and ask what the sources are. The reason why medical costs have been rising so rapidly in the country is, again, I sing the same old tune, but it happens to be true. Because whereas some 15 or 20 years ago, government spending on medical care accounted for something like 10–20% of the total amount spent on medical care. That was mostly in public health and for veterans. Today, it amounts to something like 40% or more of the total spending, and that's what's been driving these prices up.
Milton Friedman returns in a moment.